Okay, I'd be doing myself a disservice if I chose not to talk about this story, because this is honestly so huge, and it involves some of the most prominent names we've seen in hockey in the past few months, that the release of this story and the timing and everything, it allows us to put a lot of puzzle pieces into place. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, we're talking about Mitch Marner and Mike Babcock. Two names that probably meant something a little bit different to you 2 days ago than they do now if you know the story and you know what's been released. If you don't know what's been released, then okay, we'll talk about that here, but it's been covered so much throughout the past few hours that I'd be surprised if you don't know what it is. Andy Pillock made a really good video about that, so I highly recommend you check that out if you haven't already. But pretty much, we're talking about Mitch Marner and Mike Babcock and a really interesting interaction they had back in Marner's rookie season in 2016-17. Let's talk about this right here. This is a tweet from Account for Hockey, James. He is a guy who I've featured on the channel a few times before. What he usually does is he goes and he listens to the radio, and he takes these radio bits that people have, and he writes tweets about what they say. He covers what is said on the radio, and he does a pretty good job doing it because he gets all the juicy stuff and all the stuff that people actually care about. So he's been a pretty notable name on hockey Twitter for the past few months. But he recently posted a tweet that covered a few things that were said in the Toronto Sun. And this is nuts. It's just nuts. Let's go over and see this tweet that he made. This is insanely messed up by Babcock. And he links the Toronto Sun article he grabs this screenshot from. Let's read it. One tale was related to us in the past few days that is said to have occurred in the 2016-17 season during the annual Father's Trip. Mike Babcock was alleged to have asked one of the Leafs rookies to list the players on the team from hardest working to those who, in the eyes of the rookie, didn't have a strong work ethic. The rookie did so, not wanting to upset his coach, but was taken aback when Babcock told the players who had been listed at the bottom. So the tale of the tape is, to sum it all up in different words, a young rookie on the team. It's ambiguous how old this rookie is from this screenshot alone. Was brought in by Babcock, and Babcock told him, hey, list the players on the team from hardest working to least hardest working. So the rookie did it, and then Babcock afterwards told the players who were at the bottom, yo, this rookie said that you were one of the worst working players on the team. Let that sink in for a little bit. The allegation is that Mike Babcock did that, and the story has been released. Now, you can imagine the immediate reaction by hockey Twitter after this tweet came out. And it's not like the tweet was the be-all and end-all. Sure, it was from a Toronto Sun article, but James' Account for Hockey was really the one who pushed it forward in the eyes of people who read Twitter and everything. So you could imagine that this had people quite stirred up. And that's where Ian Tulloch came in, because he quote-tweeted this tweet, and he said, I heard about this Babcock story when it happened, but I didn't want to bring it up until I could confirm it was true. The rookie he did this to was Mitch Marner. So let's go over it a little bit. Mitch Marner was drafted by the Leafs in 2015. He spent his draft plus 1 year, 2015-16, with the London Knights in the OHL, where he absolutely dominated. He was over 2 points a game. He was playing with Dvorak and Tkachuk. They were one of the best lines the OHL has seen in the past 2 decades, and he was really good. So as an 18-year-old guy, he tore up the OHL. Then in 2016-17, as a 19-year-old guy, he made the Leafs. We all know he got 60-ish points. But this Babcock thing happened, apparently, during the Father's Trip. Ian Tulloch writes an article about everything that he learned about this story. And he published it really quickly last night, so I think it's very big props given to Ian Tulloch right now for releasing all of this as he did. And don't worry, if you're saying, hey, why did he not release it? Why has he been sitting on this for years now? He actually explains that in the first paragraph here. He was a rookie writer, so while Marner was a rookie on the Leafs, Ian Tulloch was in his first season writing about hockey, and, you don't want to be wrong about stuff like that. If it's a small rumor, even though it's huge, it's still a rumor and it's not confirmed at the time. So if it's wrong, you're screwed, which is why Ian Tulloch didn't want to release it publicly, even though he did hear details and he did hear the story all the way back 3 years ago. And then he comes right out and he says it. He's confirmed this story with multiple sources, which is why he's talking about it today. Now, we already know what happened from the basis of the screenshot posted by James, but let's go over Ian Tulloch's article and actually dive into a little bit of the nitty-gritty details about this. Babcock asked Marner to rank his teammates' effort level that season in the order of 1 to 20, ranging from the hardest working to the laziest. Marner obliged and, per multiple sources, put himself at the bottom of the list, with both parties agreeing that he needed to work harder without the puck. What Babcock didn't tell Marner was that he was preparing to show this list to some of the players who Marner had ranked towards the bottom, specifically Bozak and Kadri. According to multiple sources, Marner was in tears after the details of his list were shared, while his teammates were furious, specifically with Babcock. They couldn't believe their head coach would put a 19-year-old in that situation, especially considering how well-liked Marner was in the dressing room. And that right there is a prime example of how not to treat your 19-year-old rookies upon making the NHL. That in itself is not a very positive story. And the fact of the matter is here, it's something that a lot of people can kind of get behind and say, what the hell? Why would you do that? And believe me, there are arguments to be made as to why somebody would do that, but apparently, a nearly identical situation happened during Babcock's time in Detroit involving a young Red Wings forward. So, this has apparently happened before, so yeah. Taking a break from the Ian Tulloch article, though, I wanted to bring your attention to our hockey, because when this screenshot from the Toronto Sun article was posted onto Reddit, there was a comment that I think not a lot of people have seen, but I think is probably worth showing here. A very similar story to this was mentioned by user Del's Meds at the end of last season in the Game 7 thread, but the comment was fairly quickly removed. I caught it, and it stuck with me. So this comment here is from the game thread of Game 7, Boston versus Toronto in the 2019 playoffs. It was a comment made by Delsmed, and this is what it says. A friend of mine is close with the Marner family, and they detest Babcock. They told him a story about how Babcock asked Marner to tell him about the player he believed didn't work that hard. Marner said himself. After a back and forth between the two and Marner repeatedly saying, I need to work harder, Babcock was furious and said, tell me who the blank you think is our least motivated player. Marner finally said Kadri. After Mitch left, Babcock called in Kadri and told him what Marner said. Kadri was cheesed, but he talked to Mitch after, and they talked about how Babcock had done this to other players on the team. No rhyme or reason for this. So, from this comment, which it's not 100% confirmed, this is just testimonial evidence from one guy who claims to know the Marner family, we can kind of piece everything a little bit more together, right? Paul Marner. Let's talk about him for a little bit. This story apparently happened during the father's trip. Paul Marner was supposed to be there, right? Which means that he would have had a first-hand seat at all of this, which means that he probably didn't like Babcock all too much either. That makes sense. Is this why Marner, Matthews, and Nylander all asked for so much money from Dubas? Not because Dubas is a weak GM, but because it's the money that would have made them willingly play for Mike Babcock? And furthermore, is this the kind of attitude that NHL coaches show on the daily? Because let's take a look at Rachel Dory's tweet over here. because she's worked with NHL teams. She is actually mentioned in Ian Tulloch's article as well. Not to burst anyone's bubble, but this Babcock stuff happens within front offices and dressing rooms all the time. It's awful, but it's more common than you think. My point is, this is a massive issue within hockey. It's not only Babcock. Other people, including front office personnel, do this. It's a culture issue and it needs to be addressed. No one should have to deal with that. And I think anybody looking at this from the outside can agree. Just because it's common doesn't mean it's right. And just because many coaches do it doesn't mean many coaches should do it. And all in all, it's a lose-lose-lose situation. Everybody loses on this front. Babcock looks like a complete... You can fill in the blanks with whatever word you want to say after that. Mitch Marner, sure, he gets paid, but he takes the hit early on. He puts his teammates on the spot, and he willingly puts his foot forward and says, yeah, I'm the guy who said that. Sure, he didn't want to do that, but Babcock forced him to, according to the story. Kyle Dubas loses out because, hey, he hired a coach who lost the room. He hired a coach who didn't have the players wanting to play for him. And stories like these can illustrate why it happened like that. Furthermore, Marner, Matthews, they asked for so much money in order to play for this guy, and now you gave them that money. And all in all, it's a lose for the sport as well. Because in a sport that allows things like this to happen, it really paints a picture as to the culture that has been established within the game. And that's not right. This kind of stuff shouldn't be happening. And Ian Tulloch, to his credit, he'd been sitting on this story for a long time, but it's because he didn't have the verification nor the reputation to actually release it publicly without having the fear of those consequences if he got it wrong. So it's not his fault. He's just the guy who let the story out. And nowadays, we can take a look at this and say, darn, what an unfortunate story. Yikes. Hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.